Eyo, Greg Branos for the Coachspeak Index. What's good, everybody? First episode of the Coachspeak Index podcast. A sincere thank you to everybody who has joined us so far on this journey. I launched the website and Twitter account 10 months ago. We are now closing in on 27,000 followers on Twitter, starting out with over 200 subscribers on YouTube. And we have got some really big things on the horizon that I think you're going to love. My goal is to make this the most informative and biggest edge in fantasy football and NFL betting. And we're on our way. This is going to be episode 1 of an 8-part series where I break down all 8 divisions in the NFL. Today I will be breaking down the AFC West. Let's get started with the Denver Broncos. Sean Payton referred to his quarterback room as a bunch of orphan dogs. That's got to inspire so much confidence in this room. Rookie Bo Nix, who Denver selected with the 12th pick in this year's draft, is the strong favorite for QB1, and that's what I'm banking on. He is going at the end of drafts, makes for a really easy stacking piece on Underdog. You got Courtland Sutton as the first Broncos pass catcher off the board in the 8th round. And then all the other receivers for the Broncos are going in the 15th round or later. Bo Nix is my QB 28, which is 3 spots ahead of consensus on Underdog. Let's get into the Broncos receivers. And why not kick it off with the greatest performance art since Marina Abramovich's 1974 piece, Rhythm Zero. I'm speaking, of course, about Sean Payton's history of Coachspeak on Marvin Mims. Let's do a quick little timeline, shall we? November 6th, 2023. During Denver's bye week, Sean Payton said the coaches are going to work their tails off to get Marvin Mims more involved. The quote was, "I'm looking at my notepad and his number is on it." Okay. All right, we're about to get a post-bye rookie bump, right? Wrong. I hate to jump ahead and spoil things for you, but Marvin Mims averaged only 3 opportunities per game after these comments. That is what resulted from Sean Payton scribbling Marvin Mims' number on a notepad and staring at it like some middle school girl with a crush. November 16th, 2023. After Mims was named AFC Special Teams Player of the Week, Payton said, "Now we got to find him some touches on offense too." 2 weeks later, November 30th, 2023. Sean Payton declares his intention to try to get him involved early and often. Marvin Mims ended the season with 22 catches on 33 targets for 377 yards and a touchdown. He also carried the ball 9 times for a total of 30 yards. So they did not find him touches or try to get him involved early and often, like Payton said. And then we got some coach speak in this offseason. February 27th, 2024. Sean Payton, "I really think the only thing that really stopped his progress as a receiver was us. I think his progress was hampered a little bit more with the depth in the room and what we were able to do, and sometimes trying to balance that out. I think we'll see that expand." March 26th, 2024. Following the Jerry Jeudy trade, Payton said that Marvin certainly will be a candidate to play more snaps because of that, and there will be some competition, I'm sure. And then May 31st, 2024. Sean Payton said, I think we'll see a lot of growth from year 1 to year 2. Mims played more than 48% of offensive snaps in just 2 of 16 games last year. And it wasn't just Jerry Jeudy that was blocking his path to playing time. Mims was 5th in snaps per game in 2023, behind Courtland Sutton, behind Jerry Jeudy, behind Lil Jordan Humphrey, and behind Madden creative player Brandon Johnson. Judy's now gone, but the Broncos signed Josh Reynolds, drafted Troy Franklin, and they're getting Tim Patrick back from injury. And to put a cherry on top of this, Sean Payton has mentioned several times how enamored he is with the size of Denver's receiver room. Marvin Mims is one of the smallest guys in that group. So, can we trust Payton's coach speak on Mims? No, we cannot. Payton has a 50% reliability rating on usage and workload Coachspeak. But this is one of the tricky things with the Coachspeak index. When a coach has a high reliability rating and they offer up some actionable Coachspeak, I can say, hey, Dan Campbell has a 90% reliability rating on depth chart Coachspeak. So what he's telling us is very likely to happen. But when a coach is unreliable, that doesn't mean that what he's saying is unlikely to happen. It just means that we can't trust him on the matter. And we need to figure it out ourselves. When it comes to Marvin Mims, I do not have high hopes. I won't be taking him in redraft leagues. But he is cheap enough on Underdog with an ADP of 173 that I will take some shots. He's a big play merchant who can reward us with a couple big spike weeks like we saw in week 2 of last season. And this receiver room seems pretty open beyond Courtland Sutton. So maybe Marvin Mims does get some real run this year. I have Courtland Sutton as wide receiver 49. That's exactly where the market has him. Marvin Mims is my wide receiver 72. That's 5 spots ahead of consensus. Troy Franklin is my wide receiver 83. 7 spots behind consensus. Let's get to the running back room. It's pretty messy. Sean Payton told us last month that there's going to be a heavy competition at wide receiver, heavy competition at running back. I see 2 battles happening in the backfield here. There's Javonte Williams versus Audric Estime. And then there's Jaleel McLaughlin versus undrafted free agent Blake Watson. Samaje Perine, bit of a crossover who could theoretically bite into work on 1st through 3rd downs. There hasn't been any coach speak on Javonte Williams, but he played on 46% of offensive snaps, garnered 264 touches last year, and that was coming off an ACL and LCL tear. I would not be surprised to see some similar numbers for Javonte Williams in 2024. Denver drafted Audric Estime in the 5th round, and here's what Sean Payton had to say about him. The first vision would be 1st and 2nd down runner. We'll kind of see how that unfolds, but he's strong. I think he has real good vision, contact, balance. And then Estime had a small issue with his knee during the offseason program. Sean Payton said we did a small scope procedure just to make sure everything's clean. It is. He'll be available at the start of training camp. Payton has an 85% reliability rating on injury Coachspeak, so we expect Estime to be there when camp kicks off. Jaleel McLaughlin and undrafted rookie free agent Blake Watson will be competing for Sean Payton's Joker role. when Payton spoke on Watson last month, he basically said, I don't want to comp him to Alvin Kamara, but here's how it's like Alvin Kamara. Jaleel McLaughlin looked really good with the ball in his hands last season, but he only played on 18% of offensive snaps. He is not good at pass protection. And Sean Payton talked about how tough it is to have him in the backfield against blitzing linebackers. He's 5'7", 187 pounds, small dude. When he was on the field, it was a bit of a tell for defenses as McLaughlin saw opportunities on 61.2% of his snaps. McLaughlin's path to more opportunities is improving his pass blocking, which the coaches say he's been working on. Offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi commented the other day on how McLaughlin has been working on pass protection and that once the pads go on at training camp, they'll have a better sense of where he's at in that area. Payton also talked about how McLaughlin's at the facilities at 5:15 a.m., even in the off season, always asking questions, always trying to get better. So we will see in training camp. I'm going to keep an eye on those reports of how he's holding up in pass pro. They couldn't really see during the off-season program because they're just in shorts. But once the pads go on, we should get some reports and a better sense of how we should feel about Jaleel McLaughlin. Javonte Williams is my RB37. That is 6 spots behind consensus. Might need to move him up a little bit. Jaleel McLaughlin, my RB50. That is even with the market. Audric Estime is my running back 60. That is 7 spots ahead of consensus. And Blake Watson, my RB70, 15 spots ahead of consensus. All right, let's talk tight end. Payton said last month that Greg Dulcich is close to practicing and that he'll be practicing sooner than later. His rehab has gone well, and he'll be back before camp. 85% reliability rating on injury Coachspeak for Sean Payton, so we will expect Dulcich at camp. He's only played 12 games in his first 2 NFL seasons due to a problem with his right hamstring that he keeps injuring. We've heard about the upside. We even saw some of it in his rookie year. If Greg Dulcich can stay healthy, maybe we get something out of him. That was 5 Ys there in that maybe, if you're keeping track. He is my tight end 29, 5 spots ahead of consensus. Not exactly the crown jewel of fantasy offenses here in Denver, but a lot of cheap, intriguing options that are easy to stack in best ball. And they do play the Cincinnati Bengals in Week 17, which could very well turn into a shootout. The Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know why I said it like that. The Kansas City Chiefs, all right? The Kansas City Chiefs. Back-to-back champs. Looking for a three-peat. Patrick Mahomes spoke last month about how he's been establishing a rapport with Hollywood Brown, not just at NBA games, but also on the practice field, and how the Chiefs want to get back to the deep passing game, which would be pretty cool. It was very weird last year watching one of the most gifted passers in the NFL post an average depth of target of 6.5 yards, which was 4th lowest in the league. I think they turn it up a little bit this year. We have a couple of guys now in Hollywood and Xavier Worthy where they can get back to that deep passing game. Mahomes is my QB5 after Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Anthony Richardson, and Lamar Jackson. And that puts me at one spot after consensus. But I am still looking to get a decent amount of Patrick Mahomes in best ball. Running back, very into Isaiah Pacheco this year at ADP. 17.8 touches per game last year. They haven't added anyone that's a threat to his workload. And I think we see a higher powered Kansas City offense this season. Pacheco is my RB10. That's one spot ahead of consensus. I have Clyde Edwards-Helaire at RB61, 2 spots ahead of the market. I know everyone thinks that he has the RB2 spot locked down. I'm not sure I would go that far. Is he the next man up? Yes. But I don't think he automatically steps into a workhorse role if something happens to Pacheco. And we can look at what happened last year as an example. When Pacheco was ruled out of week 14, Andy Reid answered a depth chart question by saying, we've got different personnel groups, but yeah, CEH is the number one guy. Here's how week 14 turned out. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 48% of snaps, 11 carries for 39 yards, 2 catches on 4 targets for 29 yards. Jerick McKinnon, 45% of snaps, 4 carries for 19 yards and a touchdown, 3 catches on 3 targets for 18 yards. Pacheco missed week 15 as well, where CEH played more snaps, 62%. And that week he turned 17 touches into 101 yards and a touchdown. And that was the first week of the fantasy playoffs, so people fondly remember his performance there. Wide receivers. Kansas City wide receivers. Offensive coordinator Matt Nagy on Kadarius Toney. He understands the foundation mentally of where to go, where to line up. Next, Andy Reid on Xavier Worthy. He's a good wide receiver and also a good special teams returner. And he'll end up doing both to start things off with. And he'll just work into that rotation when we get him. The wide receiver rotation with Hollywood and Rasheed and Kelsey and the other fellas. So it should give Pat another weapon there which to use. Reid has an 80% reliability rating on Depth Chart Coachspeak and a 60% reliability rating on Usage and Workload Coachspeak. Reid also talked about how beyond the blazing speed that we saw on display at the Combine, Worthy's route running, toughness, football instincts, and work ethic really impressed him. Worthy did deal with a hamstring injury during the offseason program. Andy Reid was asked whether he'll be ready to go for the beginning of training camp, and he said, yeah, he should be able to. He'll get a treatment, and we'll just see how he rehabs through that. Reid has a 65% reliability rating on injury Coachspeak, which is where the danger zone kind of starts in terms of reliability. Anything 65% and under. Reid also has a bad record when he uses the phrase "we'll see." So my fingers are crossed here for Xavier Worthy. My rankings for the Chiefs wide receivers. Hollywood Brown, wide receiver 34. 2 spots behind consensus. Xavier Worthy, wide receiver 35. 1 spot ahead of the market. And I have Rashee Rice as wide receiver 40, which is 5 spots ahead of consensus. Tight end, well, we know who this guy is. Travis Kelce, tight end 2 for me, right in line with the market. And, not much else to say about old Kels. This is going to be a real powerhouse offense. Like I said, I think they get back to their deep passing ways. I do want to play devil's advocate for a second, though, because I'm a little devil. You know me. Last year we saw Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce working off of each other in the short to intermediate part of the field. Andy Reid actually talked about that at the NFL Combine, how he used them to play off each other and kind of free each other up. Really low average depth of target stuff, 4.8 yards for Rashee Rice, 6.7 for Travis Kelce. What if the Kansas City Chiefs, now that they have legit deep threats in Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy, start chucking the ball downfield at a much higher rate? Do Rice and Kelce take a hit, or does that open things up for them even more? I'll be very interested to see how it plays out. I would love to hear your thoughts on the matter. Ooh, a subtle plug for comments. Las Vegas Raiders. We've got a camp battle at quarterback. How exciting. Aiden O'Connell versus Gardner Minshew. This is iron sharpening iron right here. All right, maybe it's more aluminum crumpling with aluminum. By the way, always been really jealous of the British pronunciation of aluminum. Aluminium. My God, how classy. All right, sorry, sidetracked. Luke Getsy talking about the quarterback one position. This was his quote on kind of the things that he's looking for. I think in this game, it's really important that you have some type of escape ability, whether it's just sliding in the pocket or whether it's extending it with your feet outside of the pocket. This is an area that Aiden O'Connell really needs to work on from last season. A real statue, and he's not going to run outside of the pocket. That's not going to be him. The most statue quarterback. If statues move more than Aiden O'Connell does, but he does. He can at least work on the footwork and on not holding on to the ball for so damn long. Getsy also said that the QB1 job will come down to whichever quarterback takes better care of the ball. Gardner Minshew last year had a 3% turnover rate. Aiden O'Connell, 2.9% turnover rate last year. So, pretty close there. O'Connell is plus 150 on DraftKings to start week 1. I think there's a little bit of value there. Antonio Pierce has stated a couple of times that Aiden O'Connell will get the first crack of the job. This is O'Connell's spot to lose. So Gardner Minshew will have to separate himself in camp. If it's anything close to 50-50, AOC wins that job. And I am not convinced that Gardner Minshew is good enough to clearly jump him. Raiders wide receivers. 2 guys who have stood out to Antonio Pierce this offseason. He mentioned recently Trey Tucker, and Jacoby Myers. Pierce is always talking about what a nasty, gritty guy Jacoby Myers is, especially when it comes to run blocking. I remember him talking in a press conference last year about how if he were in a dark alley and he could pick one guy to have his back, it would be Jacoby Myers. Trey Tucker is an interesting scroll down candidate for best ball. In the last 4 games of 2023, his snap percentage was 45%, 40, 69, nice, and 64%. Pierce said Tucker was back in the building right after the Super Bowl and that he's basically transformed himself heading into 2024. He's worth a click here and there, like I mentioned, as a scroll down candidate who will be very low owned on Underdog. Here's how I have the Vegas receivers ranked. Devontae Adams is my wide receiver 14, 1 spot behind consensus. Jacoby Myers, wide receiver 65, 7 spots behind the market. Trey Tucker, wide receiver 94, 8 spots ahead of consensus. All right. Running back. Let's talk about Antonio Pierce's philosophy real quick. His 2 main focuses, according to him, are running the ball on offense and stopping the run on defense. And Pierce has a magic number for running back touches. It's 20 plus. Here's Zamir White in the 4 games that Josh Jacobs missed at the end of 2023. 24.3 opportunities per game, 114.3 yards per game, and he hit Antonio Pierce's magic number of 20 plus touches in each outing. Vegas signed Alexander Mattison this offseason. Pierce called Mattison a depth piece when he was asked at the NFL owners meeting about the signing. It's a low sample size, but Pierce has an 80% reliability rating on depth chart Coachspeak. And then recently, Pierce was asked about Zamir White, and his answer was a bit of a Rorschach test. I love these kinds of clips. It's on my timeline. You can go check it out. There were a lot of interesting quotes in there. Running back A or B, 200, 300 carries. But the one that really stood out to me was, just because you have the job now doesn't mean that it can't be taken. Pierce is really big on fostering competition. He wants his guys to stay hungry. And everything that we've heard from coaches and players about Zamir White tells us that we don't have to worry about him lacking that drive or showing up to camp out of shape or anything negative like that. Here's Luke Getsy on Zamir White. He's a different cat. That is a speed that not many guys have. And again, to be paired with that size that he has, I think Z's just going to take off for sure when we get to training camp. I want to take a moment to discuss the 2024 Zamir White is 2023 Alexander Mattison groupthink that is currently proliferating online. Let's start with relative athletic score. This is not the crux of my argument. This is just a fun jumping off point before we get to the efficiency numbers. Zamir White relative athletic score, 9.82. Really, really good. Alexander Mattison relative athletic score, 6.85. Not great. Let's dive into some more numbers. Out of 49 running backs who recorded at least 100 rushing attempts last season, Zamir White ranked 14th in rushing yards over expected per attempt, 7th in yards after contact per attempt, and had a 51% rushing success rate. Alexander Mattison ranked 35th in rushing yards over expected per attempt, 39th in yards after contact per attempt, and had a 45% rushing success rate. This is such a lazy comparison to make. If you are making this comparison, I hope a light shines down upon you as you travel this road to Damascus, you fantasy football heathen. And I hope that light illuminates you as to the error of your ways and you become a changed person, never again to compare Zamir White to Alexander Mattison. Zamir White sits at RB23 on Underdog. I'm just above that. He's my RB21, right after Ramondre Stevenson and Jonathan Brooks, and right before Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. Dylan Laube is my running back 63, 6 spots ahead of consensus. I'm probably a little too high on the rookie. He's a hell of a pass catcher, but he is not a good runner. And Antonio Pierce has talked more about Amir Abdullah thus far than he has about Laube. Tiny bit concerning. Alexander Mattison is my running back 77. That's 11 spots behind where the market is drafting him. I will have 0 shares of Mattison this year. Just so many better picks at running back and basically every other position who offer you much more upside. Betting wise, I like Zamir White to go over 800.5 rushing yards, which you can get on FanDuel and Caesars. That's 47.1 rushing yards per game if he plays all 17. He averaged 99.3 rushing yards per game over those 4 contests that Josh Jacobs missed at the end of 2023. Alexander Mattison, by the way, has averaged 59.8 rushing yards per game in 18 career starts. All right, let's finish up the Raiders here with tight end. This is a really fun one. Raiders general manager Tom Telesco referred to Brock Bowers as a hybrid receiver who will bring another dimension to their offense. Here's what Luke Getsy had to say on Bowers. Brock's a unique guy. Everyone's trying to find those dynamic differences. And I think he's just one of those elements that gives us an opportunity to do a bunch of different things. Here's Antonio Pierce on Bowers. I mean, just different. You're talking about probably the most dynamic football player in college football at that tight end position in a long time. And it's rare you get a guy like that can line up as a slot receiver, see him in the backfield, reverses, catch the ball. Pierce stated later in that same presser that he was shocked Bowers was available at the 13th pick. And let's talk about that real quick, because the circumstances surrounding that selection is a huge buy signal to me for Brock Bowers. Vegas went into the draft with some glaring needs on the offensive line, at cornerback, and at quarterback. QB dried up completely before they were on the clock, But there was a lot of really solid talent available at offensive line and at corner. And the Raiders still took Brock Bowers with a 13th pick. Even though they already had a pretty good tight end in Michael Mayer, who the franchise drafted with the 35th overall pick in 2023. When Pierce took over as interim head coach last season, one of the first things that he said was, with the Dallas Cowboys back in the day, you knew it was Emmitt Smith and Michael Irvin. We are going to make sure we go with Davante Adams and Josh Jacobs no matter what. Davante Adams earned 11.3 targets per game after that, while Josh Jacobs saw 21.3 opportunities per contest. This is a get the ball to your best players coach, and Brock Bowers is instantly one of their best players. It's going to be Davante Adams, Brock Bowers, and Zamir White this year. Brock Bowers is my tight end 9, one spot ahead of consensus. His over-under for receiving yards is 600.5 over on FanDuel. That is 35.3 receiving yards per game. I love the over here. This is a generational talent that we're talking about. They are going to use the hell out of their 13th overall pick, and they're going to deploy him in that hybrid receiver role. He is going to be very productive this year. That's the Raiders offense. It will be an interesting one to watch this year. The offensive line is not bad if Jackson Powers Johnson pans out, but they have absolutely zero depth beyond that starting 5. So things will get really, really dicey if any of those guys get injured. This is likely a bottom 7 team in terms of offensive touchdowns. But their fantasy playoff schedule starting in week 15 goes Falcons, Jaguars, Saints. Not too shabby. The Los Angeles Chargers. Many people are asking if Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman even need a quarterback. Can they just direct snap it to the running back 60 times per game? Roman was asked about the plans for his offense, and here's what he said. I definitely think we want to have some balance in our offense, but we're not just going to run the ball into a brick wall. Sometimes the illusion of wanting to run the ball a lot is just as powerful as the ability to. They are going to establish the run. They spent the 5th overall pick on offensive lineman Joe Alt when they could have drafted Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze. Jim Harbaugh said he views O-linemen as offensive weapons, called them the tip of the spear. But Harbaugh and Roman also know that they have world-class talent at quarterback in Justin Herbert, and they may throw the ball a little more than we expect them to. Justin Herbert is my QB 15, 2 spots ahead of market. I have him right below Trevor Lawrence in the same tier. Chargers wide receivers. Here's what offensive coordinator Greg Roman had to say about Ladd McConkey. I think he's a guy that we can definitely do some different things with. I think he's going to be a little bit of a Swiss Army knife. And here's Jim Harbaugh's quote on McConkey. Terrific route runner. He's got the quickness. He's got the speed that's going to be great for our offense. Love the guys that can run in the 4.3s. All right. McConkey is one of the best route runners from this draft class. Could see a lot of targets in his rookie campaign. I like him to go over 725.5 receiving yards this season, which you can grab over at DraftKings. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the Quentin Johnston portion of the show. Buckle up. Here we go. Greg Roman had the following to say on Quentin Johnston. We've done some different things with him too, not just lining him up outside, and he's looked great doing it. So we're really excited about what the future holds for him, and we want to get him the ball on quick underneath routes, catch and runs, but we also want to be able to throw some bombs to him too. This is how Quentin Johnston is supposed to be used. I'm not saying it's going to work out, but this at least gives him a chance to do what he does best. And that is something that the previous regime failed to do. Chargers general manager Joe Ortiz also talked about Quentin Johnston last month, and he referenced the TCU Michigan game where Johnston just absolutely went the hell off to the tune of 6 receptions for 163 yards and a touchdown to knock Jim Harbaugh's Wolverines out of the college football playoffs. And the way that Ortiz referenced that game made it pretty clear that Ortiz and Harbaugh have discussed that performance, and it's one that's likely still shaping the way that Harbaugh views Johnston. So that is something that I'm definitely keeping at the forefront of my mind when I'm thinking about this receiver room, when I'm thinking about Quentin Johnston, and when it gets to that area of drafts. Ladd McConkey is my wide receiver 35. That's 5 spots ahead of consensus. I've got him right below Chris Godwin and Hollywood Brown, and right ahead of Xavier Worthy and Rome Odunze. Joshua Palmer, my wide receiver 57, 2 spots behind consensus. Quentin Johnston is my wide receiver 68, and that is even with the market. Alrighty, running backs. The Chargers pilfered Greg Roman's former Ravens backfield of J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, both of whom are dealing with injuries at the moment. Dobbins is coming off an Achilles tear, one in a long line of brutal injuries for Dobbins. And this is what Greg Roman had to say about him. It's just a matter of him getting back up to speed physically. And hopefully we can keep him there because he's a huge asset for us. He also said that if you ask Dobbins probably would not say that he's quite there yet. And Roman also stated that he absolutely believes Dobbins can regain his rookie form. I don't know about that. I don't know. I'm not buying it. Sorry, Greg. Gus Edwards is dealing with an undisclosed injury. Teams are not required to disclose injuries during the offseason, so that's why we don't have an official label on it. Jim Harbaugh was asked whether he expects Gus Bus to be back by training camp, and he said that's likely. That's the likely high possibility. I just love the way that this guy talks. It's incredible. Such Midwest dad energy emanating from this dude. Harbaugh has a 90% reliability rating on injury Coachspeak, so we expect Gus Edwards back by training camp. There is one more person who I want to touch on in this backfield. And if you follow me on Twitter at Coachspeak Index, you might already be familiar with this 6th round rookie by the name of Kamani Vidal. Before I talk about him, here's what General Manager Joe Ortiz had to say about Vidal. Runs through arm tackles, can make guys miss, take a hit, stay on his feet, great balance, strong. Also offers something in the passing game as well. And when you watch him block, it's impressive. He'll throw it up in there against a blitzing linebacker. That last part is such a vital component for running backs to see playing time, especially rookie running backs. Vidal graded as the best pass blocking running back in this draft class. So damn good in pass pro. And Harbaugh and Roman are going to love that. Vidal is also someone who can carry a load and be productive with it. He turned 300 plus touches into 1,800 plus yards and 15 touchdowns last year at Troy. He ranked 2nd in college football in missed tackles forced. This guy's good. One of the many things that stood out to me when I was looking back through transcripts from Jim Harbaugh's days as the Niners head coach was his depth chart philosophy that positions are earned, not anointed. I believe Kamani Vidal easily passes up Isaiah Spiller and carves out a significant role in the Chargers' backfield of 29-year-old Gus Edwards and the memory of J.K. Dobbins. Gus Edwards is my running back 36. That is one spot behind consensus. Kamani Vidal is my RB 44. That is 7 spots ahead of the market. J.K. Dobbins, my running back at 68. 12 spots behind consensus. All right, that does it for the Chargers, and that means that we are done wrapping up the AFC West and done with our first episode. I'll be back early next week to break down another division for you. We'll be finished with all 8 divisions by the time training camp starts up. I want to thank you for hanging out with me. I really appreciate all the love and support. You guys are awesome. You can find us on Twitter at Coachspeak Index. All the coach bios and reliability ratings are on the website, coachspeakindex.com. And if you could just do one thing for me, I want you to take out a giant cartoon mallet and smash that like button on this video. Smash that subscribe button. Smash out some 5-star reviews and comments. I hope everyone has a good one. I'll see you here next time. Take us out, Sarah.